Okay, this will be the last on warfare that I teach for a while. Um, so, most, I've been in the church for a while. I've heard different things from different people, and so have you. If you've been in the church for any length of time, you heard about casting out demons and, just walking up in the name of Jesus and laying hands on somebody and the demon fleeing. And you've all heard that stuff. At other times, we somewhat don't even are unaware of spiritual entities, demons, evil spirits. We just kind of go through life, and unfortunately, we've been taught a lot of things about, what would you say, psychology. Everything is based upon psychology in your past and all of that, and so it's a Band-Aid that is put on. I read a book years ago. Henry Blackaby, Experiencing God, went through the church, and it was a very powerful book. And then he wrote a book called The Power of the Call, and it was him cooperating with a Christian psychologist. And the Christian psychologist, I can't remember his name, I had the book for a while, but since I've given it away or something. But the Christian psychologist took to task the church. And what he took the church to task over wasn't the average Christian, it was pastors. And he said, you guys are the ones with the power to deliver people, to do the work of God, and you're not doing it. And I mean, this book is 25 years old. He said, you're not doing it. You're running to the world, and you're letting the world mess with God's people, put them on drugs, leave them hamstrung by demonic activity, rather than teaching them the truth and leading them into the victory that they have in Jesus Christ. Very powerful book. I remember reading it, and it had an impact upon me, which we'll get into a little bit. My own background, I won't belabor that point, but and so we're going to go through the biblical account of Jesus casting out demons, which is usually where we run to. And we say, look, he walked up and he cast out the demons. Why can we not do that? Well, there's a simple reason. We're not sanctified. We're not empowered. He even said it to his disciples. He says, these don't go out without fasting and prayer. And we're waiting for the 7-Eleven Christianity. You take your credit card, you put it in, you put in $20, it pops out, and wow, demons are cast out. We don't, that's not biblical Christianity. It's not. And Jesus said that to us very plainly. And yet we keep trying to do the same things over and over. And so literally most Christians have thrown up their hands and just said, if there's demonic activity, send it down the road to the next church because we don't have any power. We can't do anything about this. That is not true. We are the vehicle that God wants to use. Unfortunately, we're not spiritual enough to get into the game in the right way. And I'll explain that as we go through. So we're going to go through. If you want to keep notes, you can keep notes, but most of this stuff I've already printed out for speed's sake. So We'll just take a look at, from Matthew, all the different demonic activity that Jesus dealt with. And if we believe that he dealt with demonic activity in his day, what happened to our day? Have the demons all decided that they heading for Tahiti and going on a vacation? No, they haven't. They haven't left at all. Their game is still their game, and they're out to win. And we're watching it as we speak on a wholesale level in our government and the governments around the world, pushing for the Antichrist to come. We're seeing it as we watch. We're watching our government take children and opening them up to all kinds of demonic activity by the sexual things that they're teaching them, the philosophies that they're teaching them. And this is Satan's number one goal, is to get people wrapped up into sin, and then he's got a grip, as we talked about last week. So anyway, if you want to just sit and listen, you want to keep some notes, it's up to you. Matthew 4:24. Then his fame went throughout all Syria, and they brought to him all sick people who were afflicted with various diseases and torments, and those who were demon-possessed, epileptics and paralytics, and he healed them. Doesn't say that, oh, no, I don't have power for you, or no, I can't deliver you, or no, I don't love you enough. You did this to yourself. Doesn't say that at all. It said he healed all of them. He healed them all. So what does he want to do today? We have to really ask ourselves that question. What does he want to do today? Does he want to leave people out there lame and maimed and having demonic activity, or does he want to use the church to engage in the warfare that is going on in the proper way so that people get delivered? I'll let you answer that one for yourself. Matthew 18:16. When evening had come, they brought to him many who were demon-possessed, and he cast out the spirits with the word and healed all those who were sick. This is after he heals Peter's mother-in-law. And she gets up and starts serving, and all the people came to the house. And so he healed all those who were sick. And included in that is the demonic activity that's going on. We talked about that a little bit earlier in this study. And with the word, we don't have that word because we don't have that power. I have known one man that had the ability to cast out demons. One man. And that man was sanctified to the Lord. He was. He was set apart for God. He'd been used by God for years, but he was set apart, and he was full of faith. And those are the two requirements. And again, don't condemn yourself. That's not my point here. That's the majority of us. That's where we're at. And that's okay. We can adjust. You hear me? We can adjust. It's whether or not we're going to, because it starts up here. What am I going to do? Am I going to be biblical Christian, or am I going to be the Christian that just looks around at everybody else and ministries around me and go, well, that's the norm? That's not the norm according to the Bible. It's not. So, Matthew 8:28 through 30, when he had come to the other side, to the country of Gergesenes, there met him 2 demon-possessed men coming out of the tombs, exceedingly fierce, so that no one could pass by that way. And suddenly they cried out, saying, "What have we to do with you, Jesus, you Son of God? Have you come to torment us before the time?" And so he comes, he shows up. This is Gentile territory. In one of the accounts, it says there's one. In this account, it tells us there's two. And they know who he is. So they desire to go into the swine. So he lets them go into the swine, and then the swine run down the cliff, and they drowned because they can't control the swine. But once again, at his word, these demons have to what? Yield, right? In Matthew 12:22 through 45, and I'm going to skip a few verses in here. Then one was brought to him who was demon-possessed, blind and mute, and he healed him so that the blind and the mute man both spoke and saw. And all the multitudes were amazed, said, "Could this be the son of David?" Now when the Pharisees heard it, they said, "This fellow does not cast out demons except by Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons." But Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself will not stand. If Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will his kingdom stand? And if I cast out demons by Beelzebub, by whom do your sons cast them out? Therefore they shall be your judges. But if I cast out demons by the Spirit of God, surely the kingdom of God has come upon you. Or how can one enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man? Then he will plunder his house. And he who is not with me is against me, and he who does not gather with me scatters abroad. So he comes, they accuse him of being, Beelzebub is a slight, Lord of the Flies, but it's a slight against Baal, if you would have it. And he says, how can you do this unless you bind this strong man? And that's our issue. That's our issue. He has no problem binding this strong man. He's God. He's God in the flesh. You're bound. Get out of here. Right? For us, it's not quite that easy. Doesn't quite work that way, although I have heard people say those things. Satan, you're bound, and I've never seen anybody bound. Never. Sorry. Just being honest. He goes on and speaks about that generation. He says, when an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places seeking rest and finds none. Then he says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when he comes, he finds it empty, swept, and put in order. Then he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. So shall it be, and he's speaking right to these people, so shall it be with this wicked generation. This parable goes along with the theology of the Jews concerning demons, okay, passing through dry places and all that stuff. Well, the Lord uses this to say, okay, John the Baptist came. Many of the people rejoiced in John the Baptist's ministry. They came to the light, the lesser light, John. But they didn't come to the big light. They didn't come to Jesus. And so, because they were not, filled with the Spirit of God, they were left empty. And because they were left empty, because they did not embrace the light, Jesus, guess what? It got worse for them, not better. This is what happens to people, and you've seen it. I've seen plenty of this, where people come to the Lord and say, I want the Lord, and they'll receive the Lord, but only for a little while, till they get tempted or until they get what they want. I've had multiple conversations with different people like drug addicts, and I've asked them up front, what do you want from Jesus? Well, you know what, I want to get out of my circumstances. I said, well, if that's what you want, that's what he'll do for you, but he will not deliver you. He will not save you, because you're only coming to him for a Band-Aid. And he doesn't fix people with Band-Aids. I've had multiple conversations with people where I've had to confront them. What do you want Jesus to do? Oh, well, I just want my circumstances fixed. Well, then that's all you're going to get. If you just want temporary happiness, that's what you're going to get. But guess what? It's going to be worse. Because the demons are going to come back. The evil is going to come back, and you're going to have nothing to be able to resist it with. Nothing. And that's what he's saying about this generation, is saying it's going to be worse for this generation because they rejected Jesus Christ. Now, I won't belabor the point, but if you get to AD 70, that's where the Jewish nation was. Each of them was in their own faction, killing each other. No one could restrain them against trying to throw off the yoke of Rome, even though it was to their own destruction. And Jesus had told them that's what's going to happen. They couldn't stop it. They had no power. They gave up the right to the power to be victorious when they rejected Jesus Christ. So I just bring that up to you so that you would understand what that passage is all about. And again, this doesn't explain where the demons come from or those different issues. They are present all the time, folks. It's demons that keep the world under the sway. The ruler, the god of this age, little g, is who? Satan. What does he do? He blinds people. He keeps them bound just by their blindness alone. Let alone demon possession. It's the same form of a deal. Because men love sin. Jesus said that. But you would not come to me because you love sin. The word for love sin there is agape. Totally sold out, totally committed to. It's the same love that God has for us. For God so loved the world. He's agape, in love with us. But they wouldn't come to the light. And so they were left with the darkness. And then he goes on and talks about their condemnation. That's the way that it is. Whether it's philosophies, whether it's, a handle, whether it's actual possession, it makes no difference. He's got them. He's already got them. So, disciples. Matthew 10, 5 through 8. These 12 Jesus sent out and commanded them, saying, do not go into the way of the Gentiles. Do not enter a city of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. He sent them out with all of his power. Same power that he had, they had. Unfortunately, later they assumed that that power would always be there. And that's why when they couldn't cast out the demon, Jesus said, oh, this perverse generation. He's speaking of the disciples, he's speaking of the people that were right there, and he's speaking of all that area. Because they were perverted in their thoughts about who Jesus was. And he upbraids them because they have no faith and they have no power because they have no faith. They assume some things. In Luke 10, 17 through 19, then the 70 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And I will tell you, there's a lot of people, in Christianity, that wonder, where is this happening? Where is this happening? Are people even aware of someone being possessed? Are we even discerning enough to know, evil, to sense that presence in somebody else's life? Or do we say they're epileptic, or they're this, or they're that? And some of that is true. It is. It takes some discernment to be able to discern what you're dealing with. But, Satan has a telltale trademark, and that is that he is opposed to the gospel, and he twists and perverts it. So when you're speaking to someone and that's what they're doing, I can almost guarantee you that's where the root of their heart is in the situation. Matthew 17:14-21. When they had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is epileptic and suffers severely, for he often falls into the fire and often into water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long will I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me. Jesus rebuked the demon, his first mention of the demon, and it came out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, why could we not cast it out? You see, they had already gone out as the 70, and they're going, what happened to us? We had power at one time. Well, they're trusting in themselves. And he had to teach them. So Jesus said to him, because of your unbelief, lack of faith, unbelief, for assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there. And it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. We've all heard this before. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. This demon is not going out without what? Some spiritual oomph in their lives. And they're making assumptions that they can do something. And they can't. They're powerless. They don't have enough faith. And they're not sanctified enough to be able to do this. Now, later we will see Paul and Peter deal with demonic activity in the book of Acts. They will. But I can guarantee you they're set apart at that time. They are. They're full of faith. In fact, it says Paul, filled with the Holy Spirit, when he dealt with Elymas, who was a sorcerer. It says Paul, filled with the Holy Spirit. We're supposed to get that by about the middle of the book of Acts. Because up to that point in time, that's what it constantly says, and then you don't read it anymore. It's not like the Holy Spirit left and went to heaven. We're supposed to get it by that time, that I need to be filled with the Spirit of God, sanctified, set apart for that work. So that's a key verse. For those of us in this church and those of us who do ministry, this is a key verse. And again, some may not want to be engaged with stuff like this, and I get it. I'm not, We'll touch on some of that stuff because if you get involved with someone who has demonic activity and you want to get into their deliverance, then you yourself become a target, and you better get ready for the ride. It's going to happen. Because you're butting right up against the kingdom of darkness. And they'll let you know you're right up against them. They will. So we must be conscious of the demonic presence. Okay, and that's one of the things that I'll just leave it at that. 2 Corinthians 10:3-4. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds. So does that mean I have power and I can just go and say, demon, be gone? No, it doesn't work like that. I have to go back to the prayer and fasting. I have to come back and connect with the Lord. 2 Corinthians 4:4, whose mind the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe, lest the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine on them. So this was what I was referring to earlier, is demonic activity goes on all around us. There's a lady that was coming to church, and some of you may know this particular person, but she came here, and guess what? She decided she wanted to go on YouTube and start listening to some wackadoodle doctrinal stuff. Unless God intervenes, she's gone. Because now she's listening to doctrines of demons, and they're going to take her down. Unless God is merciful. It's the way it is. There's no neutral ground. There's no neutral ground for anybody. There's no such thing. There's no happy America. Never was. There was a godly remnant in America that wanted to be godly and was a salt and a light in our country. And then there's maybe today. I'll leave it at that. Most of us know the armor of God. Why do I need armor? Because I'm going to get attacked. One way or the other, I'm going to get attacked. And I need the armor of God to be able to do what? Not to go forward, but to be able to stand against the what? The onslaught of satanic activity against my mind, my heart. And literally, the armor of God is about sanctification. You need to know that. Breastplate of righteousness, that means I need to live a righteous life. If I don't, it's a playground for Satan. If I'm not girded in the loins with truth, then guess what? I'm going to fall sexually. Satan's just going to take me down. That's the way it is. That's why Paul described it, and the Holy Spirit had him write it down. The shield of faith. I need faith. I need faith. I need the faith of being able to believe God's word against the onslaught that comes against my mind and my heart. I do. So, most of us know these. The helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. I've already told you before. I reiterate to you, this is not a broadsword for offensive thrusts. This is a defensive sword. I was just watching here recently, Patriot, just a blurt on Patriot, where he fights against the British cavalry guy. And you see both of them. He's got an Indian axe or whatever it is and a little knife, and they're fighting, and the other guy's got a sword, and then he picks up a bayonet. And so they're both fighting with these two weapons, and one is offensive and one is to counter the offensive stroke of the other one. Good movie because the hero wins, but yeah. But that's what that is. It's a small dagger-type sword that a Roman soldier had, which was for defensive purposes. It was to parry the thrust. You guys should know something about that, being in, fencing class? Although you didn't have two weapons. You learned how to thrust, I believe, didn't you? Yes. And if you got them on the defense, you kept thrusting, didn't you? Till you pinned them to the ground, slit their throats. Yeah. Okay. Did you leave blood up there? Oh, no, you weren't allowed to do that. Got it. Okay. Sorry, wrong subject, wrong person, wrong issue. So that's what the armor of God is. I'll let you guys read it for yourself. It's 6:10 through 18. But he gets to verse 18, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit. He reiterates the same thing that we've already had reiterated over and over and over again. Our danger, the danger for us. I talked to you last week about Ephesians 4:27, nor give place to the devil, that is topography. That is where he gets a grip on somebody's life through angerness, bitterness, sexual activity. It's hard to say, exactly how he gets that, but he does get it because previous to that verse, he says, be angry, but don't sin. Anger is a major entrance for satanic activity in my life. And many of us have been convicted to go forgive somebody because something was happening in our heart, and God says, no, you can't hold on to this. It'll destroy you. It'll destroy what I want to do in your life. So, many of us deal with that. 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Be sober and be vigilant. Sober thinking. I'm in a battle. You think soldiers go out and get in the front lines where bombs and shells and, mortars are going off and decide that they want to just go get drunk and get out of their foxholes and wander around? No, they don't. They're climbing down to the bottom of that foxhole, hoping that mortar round doesn't drop right in on them, right? Vigilant. In warfare, there's constant, what you call patrols. It's where there's a front line here and a front line here, and your adversary's over here, and you're over here. And every night, you send a couple of soldiers over there to probe their lines to find out what's going on. You do it as quiet as you can. Hopefully you get some prisoners to bring back to interrogate, but they do the same thing. If you fall asleep on watch, then guess what? It's easy for them, right? They walk right up on you, and there you are snoring away, and they just stab you. You're dead. You got to be vigilant. You got to be sober. And he's dealing with warfare, right? We're dealing with warfare. And he tells us what? He's like a roaring lion. Most of us, unless you go to a zoo, we don't see lions. Southern California has mountain lions roaming around out there. There's a few around, a couple in Omaha occasionally are seen, and maybe one or two here, But they're not quite on the prowl like they used to be. But there's areas where they are on the prowl. You go to, Bengal tigers, yeah. You go to Southeast Asia, they're there. And they'll kill people. They're wild, and, you have to be aware, Crocodiles, alligators. It's the only problem that I have with Florida. It's like I don't want to be around a body of water where they might, pop out of the water and grab my leg and, So you have to be aware. Even if you go to Florida, you got to be aware. You go down to a sanctuary and, You know, all looks nice, but there's always that chance. I mean, how many kids have been killed at Disney? You know, in their own little private ponds of Walt Disney World. And kids get killed because nobody's watching them. Because nobody's aware that there's, I don't know if it's alligators or crocodiles there, whatever the case may be. I mean, my son told me in Australia, everything kills you. So you don't go to the beach, you don't go anywhere. Australia is not on my bucket list. So, he's seeking whom he may devour. That's us. That's not demon-possessed people. That's us. He wants to take us down. And if you get engaged in warfare, which you already are, then guess what? You better be sober. You better be vigilant. That's why Jesus said, deliver us from the evil one. He didn't say, wake up, 4 months from now and, when he comes and attacks you, then ask for deliverance. No, that's not what he said. Every day. Every day. Deliver us from the evil one. I am no power for Satan. I am not. He knows things about you and I that we don't know about ourselves. James 4:7, therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will do what?
Flee.
He'll leave. He'll flee. He has to. So the submission to God is the issue, right? Being sanctified, set apart for the Lord. If I don't deal with this, then guess what? The devil will come. He will slander God and he will take me down. He's good at it. Here's one that you all need to know. You can read the rest of the verses that go with this. But Paul writing to the church at Galatia, probably one of the earliest books between this and James. Paul writes, he said, brethren, if a man be overtaken in any trespass. This word for overtaken is a guy who is running, but he just can't run fast enough. And he's taken down by sin. Okay? Happens to people all the time. He says, if you be overtaken by any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in the spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Satan will turn right around and attack you if you are arrogant. If you are arrogant and you approach somebody and say, well, you shouldn't have fallen like this, guess what? I can guarantee you, you're going to fall the next day. You are. Because God doesn't want that kind of arrogant attitude from any of us. He wants meekness, humbleness, and mercy. What it means to be spiritual means to be filled and governed by the Holy Spirit. Once again, we deal with sanctification. I can't do these things that God asked me to do from just knowledge-based stuff. It has to be my heart. My heart. Humility. So, it takes a spiritual person to be able to restore someone else. I talked to you about Elymas. In Acts 16, we have the girl that walks around behind Paul and says, this man knows the way of salvation. And Paul apparently didn't get any direction from the Lord for a little while. He didn't know what to do. And finally he got fed up with it because there's other issues. And he rebuked the demon, and the demon left the girl. Paul had that power. He was sanctified. He was filled with the Spirit. He was sanctified. But you don't see him doing it very often. You don't. Not in the book of Acts. So this is, and I can't reiterate this enough, this is not a game. This is not a game. Satan's a murderer, and he wants to murder people. He's very good at it. When Paul was in Ephesus, it says even a handkerchief or aprons were brought from his body to the sick and diseased and left them. Diseases left them and evil spirits went out of them. So, again, unusual miracles, but that was for the gospel's sake, and I believe because Paul was set apart. He was. I mean, I don't think, we can't look in the scriptures and say this guy wasn't set apart for the Lord. He was. But then the itinerant Jewish exorcists came, and they wanted to excise some demon out of somebody's life, sons of Sceva. And they said, we exorcise you by Jesus, whom Paul preaches. Oh, that's real good. They thought by dropping a name, and this is where I see a lot of Christians I've heard before, and I usually don't hear from them after they do all this stuff because nothing ever happens. Paul preaches also there were 7 sons of Sceva, a Jewish chief priest, who did so. And the evil spirit answered and said, so they speak, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are you? The warning to us. If I'm not connected with heaven, that's what they're going to say to me. Who are you? We don't know you. Your name is not thrown around in heaven as a sanctified, set-apart person. We're not afraid of you. You have no power. Then the man whom the evil spirit was leaped on them, overpowered them, prevailed against them, so that they fled out of the house naked and wounded. Maybe the experience of some who decided they want to drop some scriptures and say, I cast you out in the name of Jesus, and later they find out they get beat up by the very demons that they think they have authority over. It's not a playground. 1 Corinthians 12:10. And this is for you to pray about. Paul's writing about gifts that are given, manifold gifts of God given to the church. To another, the working of miracles. To another, prophecy. To another, discerning of spirits. And then he goes on and talks about to another, different kinds of tongues. To another, interpretation of tongues. The word for discerning spirits is to be able to distinguish the spirit within a person. The church needs somebody like this. Probably needs more people like this that have a discernment. Danny Blowbaum, we had a guy show up and somebody brought him, and why they brought him, I have no idea, but the guy was demon-possessed. Walked in the front door, and fortunately we have a godly guy at the door, Danny, and he dealt with the issue, kind of shoved the guy out the door and said, bye, you don't belong here. It wasn't that the physical guy didn't belong here, it was a demon that he carried in didn't belong here. And we've had a few manifestations of that over the years. Where somebody walks in and they don't belong here because they bring a spirit with them that doesn't belong here. That spirit is here to disrupt and do divisive things, and some of you are aware some people I've had to deal with. That's why they're not here. It's not so much that they're particularly, I hate somebody. It is, I love the people that are here. And people, when they are divisive and they listen to demonic spirits, they can't stay. They don't belong here. This is a sanctified group of people. It's a growing group of people. It's not a playground. It's not where you bring your own doctrines in and decide that you want to be, God's gift to the church. Doesn't work like that. Does not work like that at all. And I have to deal with this stuff. That's part of my job. And sometimes, those who have seen me do this or later find out what I do, they go, man, he's pretty harsh and hard. Concerning demonic stuff, absolutely. I'll shove someone right out that front door. Because I am a sheepdog. Or in that case, maybe even a sheep wolf. I've had to deal with this multiple times. I don't like dealing with it. I don't like this part of my job. But that's the job that God has given to me as a pastor. I'm a shepherd. It's not a playground. It's a place where people can grow and hear the truth and be protected. So I already dealt with Matthew. Because of your unbelief, for assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you shall say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. So if you're going to be engaged here in some of this stuff, and you're not set apart, and you're not, then I would say, let it pass. Let it pass. But if you feel that you want to get set apart and be part of somebody's deliverance, then you better get ready to count the cost. You need to count the cost. That's the way it is. So I'm going to run through this real quick. My personal background. Demonic activity started for me at about the age of 8. Might have been 7, 8, somewhere in there. It's about the same time we started going to church. I was exposed to pornography about the same time, which made me feel extremely dirty most of the time. But that was one of the entrances. I had dreams and or visions at about this same time. And they were weird. They were very weird. I had out-of-body experiences that recurred on a regular basis. Did you hear that? Out-of-body experiences. In other words, I was transported somewhere, not out of my room, but transported in a spirit to a very wicked place. And Satan attacked me on a regular basis. And it freaked me out, and whenever it did, I would respond as any 8-year-old would, and my dad would come and slap me around. Tell me, go to sleep. Nothing spiritual happened in our house. In fact, that's where I got exposed to pornography. My house was a house where you went to church, but beyond praying for a meal once in a while, that was it. That was it. It's a playground for Satan. Absolutely. This continued on for quite some time. At the age of 14, beat down by the world, I joined the rebellious culture. And the Holy Spirit said, you don't have to go that way. And I said, I'm leaving. Bye. And I took off. So I got into the rebellious culture, the drug culture, And I stayed in that culture until I was 26 years old. During this time, I was exposed to regular demonic activity. I had demons speaking to me out of stereos. I had all kinds of manifestations of stuff. You would think I'd be smart enough to quit, but I wasn't. I stayed inside of that place for quite some time. And it got worse, God allowed it to get worse. The month leading up to my coming back to the Lord was the darkest time I've ever experienced in my life. Satan was right up against my ear, whoever my resident demon was, telling me I couldn't get saved and I might as well just commit suicide. It was very real. I would go to bed with my light on because I couldn't even think about life. Couldn't think about anything. I was so exposed to darkness, so bound by drugs and sexual things and everything else that I couldn't get out. And I was convinced I could not get out. And Satan was doing his best to convince me I could not get out. And I was living with my sister. One day she, I don't know, I don't know how she even let me in her house. She didn't know what was going on. But we were in her kitchen. It was in the evening, and she started talking to me. I don't know, I must have opened the door, but we started talking about the Lord, and now my life was pretty screwed up, and I thought about going back to church, and at that moment she said, "You don't have to go back to church. You can pray and receive Jesus right here and right now." And I had a demon scream in my ear, "You cannot get saved." I ran out her front door. I went up the street going, oh my gosh, if I go out tonight, I'm going to die. And it was very weird. So I snuck back in her house. Certainly didn't want to talk to her. Too much truth there. So I snuck back in the house, and she had all these kids' Bibles and 6 volumes that my parents had bought years before. Pretty funky, but I opened up to Revelation, and it showed the devil dancing around the lake of fire. And I started reading the beginning of it. Little that I know, in the book of Revelation, it says, "Blessed is he who reads this." I didn't catch that part. So over the next couple of days, I continued to try to hide in the dark, and God was just pulling me right out of the darkness. And that's when I made the meeting to meet the pastor, and God's literally the only way I can describe it is an angel, because I'm sitting there figuring out how I'm going to lie and say I didn't show up, and a voice behind me and 2 hands picked me up and said, "It's time to go." I turned around, there wasn't anybody there. So I went out and got my truck and drove to my sister's and waited to find out that I couldn't get saved. That's my background. I mean, I could go through a lot of details, but that's enough for you. What I found out is the blood of Jesus is greater than every demonic force and the power of sin, because that's what God applied to me. I was saved. Right after I got saved, it was surreal. I got filled with the Spirit of God, but Satan didn't stop. He came back with the same dream. In fact, I had one of those out-of-body experiences this morning. I just know where they come from and go, don't bother. But I did. Same experience that I had when I was 8 years old. It's a weird deal. I guess he's just reminding me he's there, you know. But he came back with that same stuff, like the week after I came to the Lord. So I went to the pastor, and I'm like, "Lord, this can't be. How can I be saved and still, dealing with these issues. So I said, Lord, if you want me to say something, this guy's going to ask me to pray. Now, if you knew this man like I knew him years later, that was almost impossible. He didn't let anybody else talk. But there I am sitting in his office, and he said, hey, why don't you pray before we start? And I knew. So I told him what was going on. He said, you wouldn't even be saved. You wouldn't even be thinking about this if you weren't saved. He said, this is a lie from Satan, and I got set free. He continued to come back, but I knew how to deal with it at that point. Just before I came out here, I had other activities going on, but not the focus is not on me. I went across the street to a Bible study. The Lord laid it on my heart, and so I came home. I put a Bible study together for my testimony, and I thought, this is weirder than weird, that I'm getting my testimony together to go across the street. Who do I think I am? How presumptuous. Well, I went across the street after I put it all together, not knowing exactly what was going on, and sat next to the man that was hosting it. He played some music. We were sitting, mainly older people, and right after he got done, he said, oh, this is my neighbor Dennis, and he's going to be sharing tonight. He never said a word to me. Never said one word. So, without skipping a beat, I shared my testimony, a lot of this stuff. And then there was a lady there that ran their Bible studies, and she said God was going to use me to fight warfare. And he was going to teach me how to do that. Later, I left the Bible study, and I asked Lou, Benjamin's surrogate grandfather. I left, and I said, Lou, how'd you know I was coming? He said, I came over and prayed that you would come over and share your testimony. Talk about a man of faith. Two guys of faith put together. Anyway, when I got to Lincoln, demonic warfare started manifesting itself. It did. We were at the YWCA downtown. I remember walking out one day and standing on the corner, and there was a young girl walking across the street, and she turned and went on the other side of the street, and she had these, I don't even know how to put it, it's like all these pool balls just going around her head. It was like all around her head, and they were in uniform, but they were all around her head. In other words, I wasn't going to be able to talk to her because the demons had closed her off. That's why she walked across the street. I had times when I was standing right there, start trying to have a conversation with people, and have them turn around and just walk away from me. They didn't even know why I was standing there. But it got worse. It got far worse. We ended up having a girl come that was a lesbian, and she got baptized, but she didn't want to come out of her sin. I remember one night teaching a Bible study, and she started rocking in her rocking chair and started humming. While I'm here trying to have a Bible study. That's demonic. Disrupting God's word. Later, there was a guy that came to our church that got wrapped up in some very perverted sin. And his mother asked if I would come alongside of him. So we allowed him to live at our house for a little while. Well, I was downstairs with him, and he had a very perverted background. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, "You better get out of this room. He's going to make an advance towards you." So I got out of there. Later, he ended up seducing a girl in our church and ended up doing 8, 12 years in prison, and, just, yeah. Then we had a witch, a literal witch, show up at our church. And we went back to pray for her. It was a group of people. I can't remember who all was there, and I wouldn't even want to tell you their names, but I laid hands on her and started praying for her, and there was I had a vision of a serpent coiled up inside of her, deep down inside of her. And I'm praying, and the Lord said, "She's not here for the right reasons. She brought this demon in here. She doesn't want to let this demon go. She's bound, and she likes being bound. She came here to attack this church." Sure enough, it was right after that Jonathan went dark. That's when Jonathan started his darkness, and Rebecca and their rebellion, and that's more of a thumbnail sketch than it is a whole issue. I don't want to do the whole issue with them. It's not the point. The point is, this is my background. And God has taught me a lot of things. And so here's what I do know. Truth has to come to bear in any person's life if they're going to be delivered. Truth has to come to bear. Jesus said what? The truth shall set you free. But that's not the only thing. I would ask you, was there a demonically possessed person that we read about tonight that you think Jesus didn't love? They are not the enemy. They've been taken captive by the enemy. Some of them don't want to be free from the enemy, the witch. But some do. And they don't know how to get out, just like I didn't. So love is necessary. It was necessary for me and Jonathan that he knew that I loved him. He needed to know that. He needed to know that his mother loved him and his family loved him. And then you get to the place where prayer. And this is not a prayer for a week, folks. This may be prayer for a year. It was for us, over a year. Because that's where the power comes from, is from heaven, not from Dennis, not from us. And so we got to watch a victory. And I share with you, if God begins to bring people, then if you are not up to this, and then don't get involved with it. Because the last thing somebody needs is your counsel if you're not spiritual. If you're not seeking to be in tune with the Lord, then don't bother. Because what he needs is people that are in tune with his Spirit so that they get his direction, so that they're able to deliver on the goods. Because that's how this works. It literally is the way that it works. I was given specific steps for Jonathan, and God fulfilled all of them. But it was a very tough deal. These don't go out without fasting and prayer. So if we want to see God work in this city, you better put on the armor. You better start becoming a prayer warrior, because most of you are already targets. You're already targets, and you can't get out of being a target because God wants to do something. That's why I was a target at the age of 8. He knew. That's why Jonathan was a target. He knew. We're all targets. Satan doesn't want us fulfilling God's purpose. So armor up. Learn how to be spiritual. Ask God for the love for the lost and a persevering spirit to love them through their trial. And pray always. Pray always. So that's the final one. I didn't share my testimony to impress you. I shared it so you'd have some practical things to look at and see up against scriptural things. I am not impressive, but my Savior is. So, here's a pie in the kitchen. It's an apple pie. If you want a piece